Everybody knows they can check their DVR when they crash to see where they landed, but nobody seems to mention that with the Avata, if you go here in the app, you can see exactly where your drone's last known location was. Or when you're out in the field flying and suddenly need the complete Betaflight configurator, instead of going home to your computer, you can use the SpeedyBee app on your phone to connect up and change whatever you need. If you're trying to show off your drone's LEDs to your mates, you can change this setting in Betaflight to cycle through different colors as you change your throttle. Anyway, today I'm going to try and give you 50 FPV drone tips that I wish I knew earlier in just 15 minutes. We're going to go from everyday tips to filming tips and even tackle some Betaflight commands that have actually changed the way that I fly. That's one tip every 18 seconds, by the way, so I should probably end this intro and get on into it. Okay, if you're getting into the hobby or know someone who is, there's two super easy things to adjust that'll make flying so much easier to get the hang of. Head into Betaflight Configurator, down to pitch tuning, rate profiles, and find that little box called throttle limit. Simply put in a percentage of how much power you want your drone to have. I'd say limiting more at first is an easier route, something like 70%. That's going to cap your drone's power to whatever you set that number to, making throttle control that little bit easier. Another one that is super helpful to beginners is under modes. If you scroll down, you'll find a mode called Acro Trainer. Select this one as a full selection, hit save, and now it's active. This is going to give you full acro controls, however it does put a tilt limit on how far you can actually tilt the drone around. Flips and tricks just simply aren't possible with this mode on, but to get someone flying easier, it's definitely the way forward. While we're here, depending on your ground surface that you're flying on, activating flip over after crash mode is another lifesaver, so you don't have to walk out onto the field or track to recover your drone. Simply flick a switch and roll it back over. You can find flip over after crash a few modes above the Acro Trainer mode. Set this to a switch so that you can still fly normally too. Now, what if you don't have access to a computer to make these changes? Well, aside from the earlier mentioned SpeedyBee app on your phone, you can actually access a very basic Betaflight menu directly inside your goggles. It's super easy too, just use this cheat code with your controller sticks. Throttle stick from the center to left yaw, and then at the same time also pitch forward with the other stick. Boom! No excuses for changing things out of the field now. Speaking of changing things though, if you've got an LED enabled drone like the Nazgul Evoke, not only can you do what we mentioned earlier where you change the LEDs with the throttle, but you can also simply just set a new LED color and completely customize your drone. Simply go into LEDs, click into one of them, and then select the color that you want. Now this one's not super fun, but it is super useful. I've actually used it a few good times now. But if you've got different settings that you'd like to switch between quickly, you can actually set presets as favorites by clicking the star icon. Super handy if you switch between other people's custom rates or if you just set up drones a lot. Now, if you run the same battery capacity a lot, like on a tiny whoop, you can not only track how much power you have left with, numbers on your OSD, but also a dedicated battery bar that drains as your battery drains. It's such a cool graphic. Anyways, go to OSD, select battery usage, and then don't forget to save. Whew, how good. 10 down already. Let's keep on going though. Whilst we're in here, if you're running a pair of HD goggles like DJI, Walksnail, or HD0, you're actually blessed with having access to a much prettier OSD display rather than the classic analog one. If it's not already on for you, simply select video format and then hit HD. Alright, one last OSD thing. On DJI 03, you can swap out the original DJI setup and instead overlay Betaflight's much more detailed OSD. Go to your set of DJI goggles, head down to settings, display, and then select custom OSD on. Now just set up your HD OSD in Betaflight and you'll be on your way. Speaking of 03 units though, these 5 tips are going to make you an absolute master at cinematography straight out of camera. Right, head to settings, camera, advanced settings, and change the color profile to D-Log-M. This enables 10-bit color, which has millions more of colors in it. Yep, you've heard that right. Literal millions of colors. And it also allows you to get rid of that awful over-sharpened look too, which doesn't look great, right? Next, head to the camera settings themselves. The first 2 things to lock is your shutter and ISO. By locking the shutter at either 1/60 or 1/20, you're now allowing motion blur to become visible while flying. By following suit and locking ISO, you're also not allowing your camera settings to change mid-flight, which can look pretty bad. Also, while we're within these camera settings, make sure you set your aspect ratio to 4:3. This allows for more flexibility in post-production and can let you reframe things like cars or people if you're tracking them. By now though, you'll more than likely be seeing a very white, bright screen. To counter all that extra light that we're now letting in manually, you're going to need to slap an ND filter on the front of your 03 unit. Pick one depending on the amount of daylight you have. For sunrises, you might only need an ND4, whereas for, I don't know, the midday harsh sunlight, you're probably going to want an ND32. To top it all off and to really add the pizzazz to your footage, make sure EIS is turned off, which happens to be electronic image stabilization. And then later on, using either your phone or computer, run that footage through GyroFlow and smooth it the hell out. A little bonus of doing this too is that not only will you get silky smooth footage, but it also de-warps the lens too, making the final result a much nicer looking image. Flip all that on its head though, what if you don't care about cinematics and you just want to race? Well, thankfully there are two really easy ways to set up two completely different types of race courses. Take a traditional 5-inch drone initially, want to practice racing but have no budget for actual race gates. Easy, just buy some cones and grab some pool noodles and mark out gaps to hit through a park with trees. What if you don't have the luxury of a massive safe flying space though? Great question, but it's even easier. Grab your tiny whoop and those pool noodles and then make mini features to hit. Upward sticking half noodles could be a fun little slalom. Curved noodles can become wall-mounted hoops. Honestly, there really are no limits, and if you put time into it, you can make a pretty cool lit up course like I did in a really tiny backyard. This DIY approach is what makes FPV so damn fun in the first place too, so it would actually be criminal to not run you through a few building tips that even a few months ago would have saved me so many headaches. Like, you know how you get that clear heat shrink with your VTX? Yeah, well, don't just leave it there because you figure you don't have a heat gun. Spoiler alert, I might have done that. Heck no, always use heat shrink, otherwise you're gonna short something out. Another common one I see a lot is using zip ties to hold your motor wires down. I used to do this as well. Unsurprisingly, it does work. The issue is though, on a hard crash, the zip ties can actually cut right through the motor wires and well, that's gonna be more than a pain in the butt for you. If you're like I was and don't know soldering all too well, you'll be glad to hear that you weren't the only one struggling to solder down that negative battery wire onto your ESC. This is one of the most painfully annoying solders on the whole drone, but the easy fix here is to just ramp up the heat on your iron and you'll watch in real time as the pain disappears. Another one on that too is if you're trying to unsolder something, particularly an older solder joint with a bit of dust or something on it, you might find that it simply won't melt down. Easy fix again, pop a little bit of flux over it and just watch as it instantly cures your depression. I kind of feel like this is a bit of an advertisement, like watch as it instantly cures your depression. Okay, yeah, no, I don't think I've ever heard that in an advert actually. Anyway, when you're soldering those wires down, make sure you're not just leaving loose wires hanging around the place. Twist them up, then solder them so you, one, have a much tidier build, but two, it also lessens your interference. Win-win situation. Then finally for building, before you decide to plug your brand new drone into a battery, stop and use a damn smoke stopper. It's actually got the potential to save your entire stack if you've got something shorting out, so it's well worth the few extra dollars that you'd have to pay for it. Okay, we're halfway through. Deep breath in, long exhale out. Whew. It looks like we're going good for time, so let's keep on going. Another way to save your stack, particularly on a race drone, is to use something to protect the inside of your drone from crap getting into it. For that, just use a stack saver. It's a stretchy elastic band that keeps the muck away, and hey, it also looks cool as hell. What might not come across as cool as hell to your friends, however, is an ESC startup tune. This one is too long to show you exactly how to do it, but I've made a short video on it in the past and made my drone play the Crazy Frog tune whenever it started up. Super fun, until the next day, at which stage I was quite sick of it. With DJI goggles 2 or the Integras, there are some very cool features that I actually missed out on for the longest time. Hey, some might even be an option for non-DJI goggles as well. Firstly, you can change the display scale of your screen within your goggles. So if it looks like the edges are super blurry for your eyes, just make the display size a tad smaller and now you've got a view of everything in perfect focus. On that note too, focus mode is an option to turn on within your transmission settings. When reception gets rough, instead of trying to prioritize the connection of your entire full camera view, it instead focuses on sending you through less quality on the outer edges and more quality in the center, which, hey, it could be the difference between a crash and just scraping free, so yeah. Turn that one on. You can also turn this option here on, which will enhance your contrast and color, making for a way nicer flight, but only within the goggles. If you're lucky enough to have friends, you can link them into your flight using audience mode, which they can then tune into by wearing their goggles and watching you fly live. Or if you don't have the luxury of multiple pairs of goggles and your friends still want to watch, just hook up your phone to the goggles and head into the DJI app to watch the goggles feed live. Then, while you've got that phone plugged in, if you have a DJI controller, you can actually start playing the DJI simulator right there within the goggles themselves. It's way more immersive than playing a sim on the computer or watching it on your phone screen, plus you can kind of take it anywhere as you don't need to carry a whole laptop with you for it. But what if you don't have the DJI controller? What other things are there to know? Quite a few actually. Did you know you can use a PlayStation or Xbox controller to connect up to most FPV simulators? This is going to be absolutely perfect if you threw your actual FPV controller across the room one day and smashed it to pieces. Anyone actually done that? I haven't, I'm genuinely asking you. Have you done that? Or if you simply don't have a proper controller yet, it's a fun way to get started. If you've had a controller for a while now though, and it has a screen like my TX16S here, there's a good chance you're missing out on a really cool feature. When I bought my TX16S, it came with OpenTX installed as a firmware. Natively, this is all controlled with the buttons and scroll wheel. Once you update it to EdgeTX, however, you find out that without knowing about it, your TX16S is at a touchscreen the entire time, and it was only software limited before. That blew my damn mind when I found that out. Now, have you ever had issues calibrating your sticks and found that no matter how many times you tried to roll them around in big circles, they always seem to be off again afterwards? Well, all you need to do is take a damn chill pill. Move each stick only to the ends of each axis without slamming them, and then boom, properly calibrated sticks. You can remove your stick ends and replace them with much grippier knobs. I personally love the 533 ripsticks. No matter how damn sweaty my fingertips get, they always keep my fingers locked on. You can also utilize that little loop on your controller and slap a lanyard attachment onto it. This was a game changer for me and allowed me to be able to stand up and fly easily, which is really damn helpful if you're flying from dirty or wet ground. Something else that has proven really useful to me out on the field is figuring out which way my props go on. Make the peace sign, start from the middle of the drone, and move outwards to find out which way the pitch of the propellers should be going. The upward pitch should always face the direction that the motor will be spinning at. Another propeller tip here is for small drones like a Tiny Whoop. Swapping out the stock 3-bladed propellers for 2-bladers significantly changes how the drone flies, and in my opinion is a much zippier and responsive flight. It's really nice for racing the whoops, and they're actually a lot easier to swap out when you need to replace them. Now, looking at the DJI Avata specifically, there are some really helpful hidden features that I've found out slowly as time goes on. Let's do a quick fire on the top 5. You can grab the drone from the top and flip it over to turn it off. You can switch over to manual, also known as full acro mode, mid-flight, and vice versa. Really handy for easy takeoffs. You can use head tracking to give you a whole new level of control and feel while flying. You can check inside your goggles what the last footage was before you crashed your drone. But taking a step back from DJI specific things, these 3 battery tips are almost guaranteed to save you some money. Before you fly, tuck that balance lead in between the XT60 cable and twist it to the side so it locks itself in there. Or use a secondary battery strap specifically to hold your balance lead out of the way of your propellers. Then, if you find that your XT60 connection is starting to come loose, grab something like a soldering iron tip and gently spread the connectors out on the drone's XT60 lead. It's going to be a whole lot more of a solid connection now. Alright, time is really starting to close in now, so last 3 tips, super quick fire. You can use your phone to connect with Wi-Fi directly to your ELRS receiver on your drone. That'll allow you to put your binding phrase in without a computer. Want to hand your drone off to a friend? Set your ELRS receiver into lone model mode, then have them bind up without changing your binding phrase. Now you want to watch what your friend is seeing, but you're on analog, no stress, just tune into the same channel as them and you'll be seeing exactly what they are too. Alright, phew, that is 50 tips in 15 minutes. Now if you want to see what happens to a bad drone LiPo battery when it gets charged, head on over here to watch that video. Peace.